together, we're talking about a commitment. That's the heart of it. It's a commitment. You're coming together based upon a commitment. That's the one word that can describe it. Because you're trying to build something. You have a vision about where things are supposed to go together, and you're about to build this. You don't really know this person. I mean, you might even grow up in the neighborhood, but you don't know this person in that way. This comes with time. And people who have been married or been together for, well, really 1 year now, 2, 3, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, they will tell you about how they have learned this person over their lifetime with this person. Okay? They will tell you that, how do you learn somebody? You don't learn somebody by what they say. You learn somebody by how they act in particular situations. How they behave naturally and normally in given situations. I used to say, you know that somebody loves you when you know that they will, die for you. We can say that they will live for you, but when you know somebody, and that's not going to happen with it. That might be in your imagination in the first, few years or so. But when you know, because you've seen this person do selfless things for you, when you know what this person will do for you, then you can start talking about your love. They talk about love in our tradition as being a mountain that you have to climb together. And when you meet each other, you're at the bottom, you're at the base. Then you start to climb this mountain together, and climbing this mountain together takes decades of getting to know each other. Okay? Ups and downs, struggles, the sacrifices, all the rest of that is required for you to, at that point in time, say, yes, we love each other. Initially, we're trying to figure each other out. We're trying to work together. We're trying to, and that's even there's another point. That's why I do not have a problem. And Europeans have misconstrued it so that they can have their individualistic way. I don't have a problem with the idea of, in this society, in the African nation now, elders selecting mates among the warriors. If those elders have grown up with those people, so they know the qualities of each one and they know what will match. And if the elder is responsible for extending this society into the future, why would an elder make a bad choice? Their job is to find the best mate for you. And they should know better than, plus they're supposed to have experience in a relationship themselves. So they know what works and what doesn't work. They should know, yeah, he's going to be good for her, she's going to be good for him, because they work together and they have complementary skills, talents, abilities, and they have a similar vision. Okay, you can really put this. You can put two people together really from anywhere and put them in that relationship, and they can grow to like each other. They can grow to love each other. Sometimes there's nothing to say that any two particular individuals who find themselves at 18 or 19 are going to be, together forever. I really don't know how to explain that, but there's nothing about love within a social setting, within a society, where anything is guaranteed. It's like you look at a couple sometimes and you say, how did those two get together? They are so unlike. They are so odd. I mean, I really have no idea how that match could possibly have occurred. Okay, so there's no guidelines. There's no rules. There's nothing that says that any one person cannot love, marry, what have you, this other person over here. There's no guidelines for that. So the choices have to be based on commitment and different skill sets, if you will. And I don't think anybody is better qualified to make those kind of judgments than elders, in the community. Elders who are, and elders, not olders, elders in the community, okay, who are looking out for the interests of those people. So, no such thing at the beginning. So this essay began because over the years, we've used the word romance. We're trying to replace words. Mentor with Jegna. We're a soldier with the Safa. We're trying to find words that better fit what we're trying to be, what we're trying to become. And warriors would ask me on a regular basis why I keep saying romance. You know that word originated in Rome and what that means and blah, blah, blah. I said, why do you keep using it? Why don't we have something that is better? And I thought about it for years and years and years, and I went and talked with Joe when I was trying to put this together. This is all about a discussion for a replacement for the word romance. And we have to take this term like we take other terms. This is the best one I found for that. This is the best one I've been told to fit that. So we have to use that. In a quick nutshell, Korɔkorɔ, like being African, is an act. It's not a conversation, it's what you're doing for somebody else. That's romance. We have removed, skipping around, we have removed the definition of romance so far from what it's supposed to be. In essence, romance is knowing the other person, seeing what it is that they need most, that they really don't have the time or the inclination or the energy to do at that time, and doing it for them. That's romance. That's romance. Okay? That's miles above 12 roses. Miles and miles above. What would you rather have? 12 roses or your dishes washed for a year? I see some folks have questions. It's like we have moved away from the emotional, the spiritual, the human part, and we've attached it onto a material frame of reference. So in fact, if you're not receiving something material, male or female, then romance isn't involved. If it's not something, and that's not un-African either, the problem is the material priority in the West. That's the problem. Not the giving of gifts, that's not new. Europeans didn't invent that. And that's it. They invented romance, okay, so we didn't sit on the beach holding hands on the sand looking up at the stars. We didn't, pick flowers on the way home and give it to whoever. She didn't get her feet rubbed sometime when we came home or we were there. We didn't do any of this stuff. We waited for the Europeans. That's that same savior mentality we have in so many other areas. Without them, we wouldn't know how to be romantic to each other, how to care for each other, how to act like we care for each other. Okay. I guess it'd be another argument, which it's amazing to me how many common sense arguments Negroes and lost souls overlook in an effort to turn everything European into something that's correct, especially when it's a statement against us. So we know that and they have said, we're the most religious, most spiritual, in fact, the most gullible people on the planet. We love anybody and everybody. That's how they were able to do this. And even they'll say, these dumb people, they just turned over their stuff to us. We just so loving that the most important person in the community was the person who was willing to give the most without expectation of return. Yeah, this is us. And yet somehow we missed the boat on caring for people. We don't know anything about love. This is us. How could you have that? We are some of the most gullible people on the planet when it comes to, people who have done the wrong things to us. Okay, let's move on to another point. I want to make a point before I continue this. Just a thought that I had earlier. How do you destroy an African family? Of course, you can separate the man and the woman, but you can also allow the man and the woman to stay together, but define complementarity and romance in European terms. That'll tear it apart. That'll tear it apart. So if you're operating within Eurocentric definitions of romance and love, it's understandable why over half of their marriages end up in divorce, or over 60% of ours do. That's understandable. Okay? And that's really not the fault of the people who are getting divorced. That's the fault of us being brought up in a society that approaches romance and love from a thing perspective. Okay? That kind of priority. So if you want to tear African families apart, then you have them thinking inticidally. And the men and the women can't be together. Okay, I've seen so many, the men and the women, they can't be together. because it's not a fit. It becomes a point of using. Who can use who the most? Who can control who the most? Who can have the most? Who can get the most from the other person? Reminds me of the brother in California who was trying to help some young black males, and he had money from a grant, and he was able to give it free, blah, blah, blah. But the boys, they were sort of standoffish. And he was wondering, why? And their response to him, in terms of how they said it, he said they were wondering what you want. What are you going to get out of this? We know that you're trying to get something out of this. Yeah, we're taking the money, but you want something out of this. They could not believe, because of the way we are mentally brought up, that he was doing this from his heart, that he was just trying to help. Or we've been brought up and accustomed to this, so when we walk into relationships, back here somewhere, all right, what does she want? Okay. I talk to the young folks all the time in terms of, we haven't done that this year yet. We'll get into discussions about the boy-girl thing. And, they get to one giggling thing and say, all right, sit down, write a list. I want you to write down the 10 things that you want in the woman or the man that you want. When they get finished with that, I tell them, put them in the order of priority. And almost always with the guys, it has something to do with the body. With the girls, it tends to have something to do with the money. And I look over the list, and we talk about it for a minute, and I say, particularly to the guys, but that's one part, and the guy takes over with the girls. And I say, okay, you want this fine, right? Nice shape, nice legs, nice everything, right? Yeah. Some hips that the baby can sit on like this. Yeah, that's what you want, right? Yeah. And I said, okay. Well, what happens one day, year and a half after you get married to this woman, and she walks out into the street, and this truck hits her. She ends up getting bones broken, face all tore up, body all torn up, and when the hospital finishes with her, she's paraplegic. Don't be smiling. She's paraplegic. Her face is all twisted and distorted, and she can barely speak. Okay. What are you going to do then? Because you married her based upon how she looked. You can go any deeper than that. That's what European culture does. It lets you stop right here. And you can pretend that you know the rest. You pretend that you know the rest. And then you go into shock when you see that that's not what it was. And we go into these relationships with what do you call it? Not the looking glass self. Impression management. It's a sociological concept. I know it's in other disciplines too, but it means that you try to control how people see you by modifying or changing or adjusting your language and how you wear your hair and how you talk, because you're trying to read what they want from you. So you can present the correct image so you can get what you want from them. So like a guy, give you an example, a guy gets up on Saturday morning, he goes out into the driveway, he's washing his car, he hasn't brushed his teeth yet, combed his hair, nothing, he's still in his pajamas, and then he sees this female coming down the street who he's been trying to talk to for like 3 months. What does he do? He runs inside, washes, throws some stuff on his hair, puts on his 3-piece suit, comes back out, and he's on his phone. Because he's trying to control her impression of him. He's trying to manage her impression of him. And most of us, when we walk into relationships, what we see and what we present is fake. It's not us. It's not real. There was a study that was done back in the 70s, and it looked at people who lived together before they got married and people who didn't live together before they got married. And the results were the exact opposite of what I expected. People who lived together before they got married had a higher rate of divorce than people who didn't. I expected the people who lived together, got to know each other, blah, blah, blah. They would be there. But no, they had higher divorce rates than the ones who didn't. I came to the conclusions because the people who live together, when people get married, I'll say the day after the marriage, or the week after the marriage, you really start to see that real person. And sometimes it's not like a major, for us, maybe for her, well, wasn't that major of a difference. But it's like, okay, now we're together, so now I can show you who I really like. Okay? And If you've been living with this person all this time, it's going to be a greater shock than if you've never lived with this person before. So you ended up with more divorces here than here. We come into this so fake. We're not real. We don't sit down and talk about. I've gone off the topic now. We don't sit down and talk about important stuff before we decide to get married. Okay. Your religion, how many children you want to have, where you want to live, what's your vision for African people. You know, we don't talk about things that are really, really serious, you know, beforehand, before we get married. So we don't get revealed to each other before then. So European romance has one sentiment. Fantasy. That's what the media is all about. Talked about in the sex imperative, where every thing that Europeans put out for entertainment has to do with, hey, you're going to find a love, romance component to it. You're going to find it because they're supposed to look just like how men are supposed to look. 99% of us don't look like that and don't want to look like that. But this ideal type, that's from Anita Baker, Fairy Tales. That describes it to a T. She wasn't told about this. She wasn't told about that. She wasn't told about. Somebody should have warned me about this. What did Mama Aisha say that she went back to her mother? She was in having a tiff with her husband, and she went to her mom and said, you know, why didn't you tell me about this in marriage? She said, because you shouldn't got married. But there are things that we need to know. There are things that they need to know before they do this. It's not easy. I don't think it's supposed to be easy. Because if it's too easy, you don't grow. If you don't struggle, you don't move forward. You don't grow. It's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be extraordinarily difficult, but there's supposed to be a little tension in there. Struggle, toning, that requires some work. Conflict. You come to solution through conflict. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis. You come through this process to grow, to develop. And I argue that that's one of the main reasons why marriage has been so put down in our community, because somebody somewhere knows that this makes us stronger. I don't think that there's anything in a man, I can't speak for women, but I'll say this, I don't think there's anything in a man or woman's life that strengthens them more than marriage. I don't think that there's anything that does it more than that. I really don't. Because you can't move away from this. Hey, you have decided that you're going to be together and work through this, so you can't just go and run, or it's not marriage. You got to stay there and work with this. You got to stay there and face your fears. You got to face your selfishness. You have to face your worst qualities. This is, y'all likes to quote, I can't remember who it was, it said, when you get married, then you find out your bad qualities. Because your partner will tell you in words or some other ways. You'll get to know where you really, and you thought that you were really good in those areas in many cases, but you really get to see you're pretty sorry there. So that opens up your eyes, so it tells you something to work on. It gives you something to work on. And I'm not perfect. I don't think anybody else is perfect. And it's good to have, I guess it's sort of like the classroom where students don't want to be embarrassed by giving the wrong answer or giving their interpretation of something. And I said, well, this is where you practice that. Nobody's going to laugh at you. Nobody's going to make fun of you. Nobody's going to talk about you behind your back. This is where you practice. So a marriage is really practice for what we have to deal with out there. You're supposed to leave home stronger. You're supposed to leave home better prepared to deal with that nonsense out there. Okay. In the European context, romance expedites. Now let's close your ears. Sex.
Now it's on a telephone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Talking to daddy.
Okay, better not be a girlie on there with. Tell them about that. In the European context, it expedites sex. It allows it to happen. You're talking about people who are in intense competition with each other. Men battling women for position, jockeying for position in relationships. You have to procreate or you die out. So romance, a European invention, allows that to happen, allows sex to occur within that context of battle. It's sort of like the romance is like an aphrodisiac. It's a calming drug that allows you now to be with this person in peace until it's over, and then you go back to your corners. So they give you some chocolates, some flowers, and I don't know, a ring. Okay, now we can do this, and then after that wears out or the roses die, then we can go back to what we were doing before. Romance allows it. You have to me, you have to understand it in that context. It's not that romance is bad. It's bad according to how it's defined here. That's what we need to make that distinction. We're not talking about them when we're talking about us. We're talking about them, and we're talking about us in terms of how we are aping them. And in our genius, how we're even taking it to the next level. So it allows it, it expedites that. So, we want to define this correctly. Expressing Korɔkorɔ correctly requires a politicized mind. It requires a mind that understands our story and history, understands to some degree contemporary events, political economy, because we should be giving things to our compliments, but we need to know what to give. We give a lot of the wrong things, and we act as if those are the only things that are of value. If we know anything about diamonds, if we know anything about blood diamonds, if we know anything about where diamonds come from, if we know anything about what diamonds are funding, wars between Africans, suicidal wars against Africans, where this one African group wants to take over the mines so that they can serve Europeans better by digging out more diamonds for them. If we understand where they came from, then we might rethink giving them. It's like diamonds, what, they're the only things? And if we understand the people who are in charge of the diamond industry, European Jews, then we understand that there are a lot more diamonds there than they let out, because that allows them to control the price. Quantity will dictate, just like the older car costs more, they're antiques and classics, they're going to cost more. So they're controlling the amount that are coming into the market. It's not just because of the hardest stone. And in fact, if we really want to use that as an argument that the hardest stone in the world, if we'd be buying each other black diamonds, because black diamonds are harder than the ones that we have on our fingers. They're the ones that are used on the drills that dig into the ground. On the tips of those are black diamonds. So we'd be wearing black diamonds if that was what it was, the hardness. But that's not the only thing out there. That's not the only thing that exists. And if we look at it correctly, we know that every time that we buy a diamond, we're sending some European Jew's child to college. We are funding the beginning of a business to better exploit us with. If they're where we're getting our diamonds from, and there is, De Beers is the largest diamond company in the world. That's European Jews. So we're funding our exploitation, our oppression, our destruction. Every time you buy something that helps them in any way, shape, form, or fashion, you are paying for that destruction and domination. You're paying for it. Out of your pocket, freely, happily. And walk around celebrate. Ooh, look what I got. I'm going to give her this tonight. Yeah. No. You're paying for that. So as intelligent political people, we ought to be intelligent enough to find other ways to do that. Now, if we start mining diamonds, well, I might have a whole different opinion of that. If we were mining other precious minerals, I have a whole different opinion of that. And I see a lot of sisters, a few brothers getting real creative with copper and precious stones. There's no reason why we can't make that into what it needs to be, because the value is what we believe. Okay. So if we believe that this was more valuable than diamonds, or we believe this, then suddenly everybody have a piece of chalk on their finger. Value is in perception. It's not a given. Just like directions are not a given. Not given. These are political decisions. These are political decisions. Just like where you live in the city, whether it's better or worse, regardless of crime or what have you, it's a decision. It's a political decision. Which is best? Which neighborhood is best? Which clothes are best? So I have on a t-shirt, but I have on an Armani t-shirt. This t-shirt is better. Same t-shirt. Little piece of thread on here. But we value that as more. In fact, we'll pay 4 or 5 times as much for that because of that. So the value is what we give it. So we need to rethink this. We need to rethink this. We need to rethink this. Because of who's picking them, who's growing them. And it's primarily not us, but you got a lot of Hispanic folk who are attending these bushes, if you will, for super sub-minimum wage under some of the worst working conditions on the planet. And we are enjoying the politics of that. We are, in fact, I said we're enjoying giving Europeans the money for that because we don't grow them. Maybe that's what we need to do. Maybe we need to start buying some rose bushes. They're not difficult to splice and create new rose bushes. Neither are azaleas. That's not difficult. So Enia still gets her flowers. They come off the rose bushes out front. Or what some people call weeds, but to me they're pretty flowers. So if I go out in the yard and I see some, people call them weeds all they want to, they look like nice flowers to me. I'll pick them, you know, and she humors me. But she gets them. It's the thought that makes a difference. It's the thought that, man, you all got me going another day. When Enia and I met, we graduated school, and I was dirt poor. No car, no nothing. I have no idea what she saw.
Repeat that?
I was talking about you now too.
Because you saw me.
I said saw in me.
Oh.
Anyway, Valentine's Day came and we were still celebrating at that time. Didn't know any better. And I had, like I said, I had no money. So I took some Dean sausage and I cut it into slices and I shaped them into hearts and I fried them. And she had heart sausage and scrambled eggs for breakfast.
Oh.
But it's the thought. It's the thought. Why can't our children do that? Why can't a lot of us do that? Because we don't think in those terms. We don't think in basic handicraft terms. We don't think about using our hands. A lot of times we don't know how to use our hands. I want to say never bought her a card because I make all her cards. And I make the students. Most. I make the students make their cards. For Mother's Day, for whatever, Grandparents' Day, they make their cards. They make the gifts because it's something that they need to be acquainted with. What's the difference in importance if I take $50 and go buy something in the store or take 5 hours and make something? It's sort of like what you do. You take more value in the model car that you just bought from the store and threw some paint on it, or the one that you had to build from scratch from 45 different pieces. And you take greater pride in what you made by hand. At least you should, because this is your energy in that. You built that. You take more pleasure out of the fruit and vegetables you get out of your garden that you took the time to grow, plant, weed than you do from buying them in Kroger. The same sentiment, and if he or she doesn't understand, then maybe you need to have a conversation with that individual about what it means to be African. Because that's going to lead to some problems later. The two most problematic ones in terms of romance. These are the two worst. And I think I have them like one of each. Just something for you to read at home, to think about. We celebrate their holidays in their way. The highest day for suicides is New Year's. New Year's. Because I didn't get nothing or I didn't have nobody. Yeah, absolutely. I didn't get the right size ring. I didn't get the right carrots. I got the wrong filling inside of the chocolate.
It's 2 pages. Oh, it's the second one's fine. Oh, it's
The absolute worst. Weddings. And people should get married, and I'm for weddings. I have no problem with that in the African tradition. But I said something I want to read that. By far, weddings are the worst example of this thoughtless confusion over how to properly demonstrate our love for each other to the world because of the expenses involved. Because of the expenses involved. Yeah. In a materialistic world, because of the expenses. People going into debt for life. People going into debt for life. The money spent, the debt incurred on wedding ceremonies, receptions, venues, rings, outfits, honeymoons, and other incidentals by people who have almost no accumulated wealth is incomprehensible to sane, sovereignty-seeking minds. Given that, in all probability, the couple is already above their heads in debt, the foolhardy, conspicuous display of love through the purchase of exorbitant, superfluous things incurs additional, unreasonable debt. So you come into this, you come out of college. You already got, what, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in debt. And one, yes. Going to grad school, going to professional school. I knew a number of individuals whose debt was well over $100,000. And they'll never pay it off. They'll never pay it off. Never. It's not possible. Unless you hit a couple of lotteries. It's not possible to pay it off. It's designed that way. It's not possible. It's designed that way, absolutely. You can't pay it off. You can't pay it off. And live. Okay? Get you an insurance policy, I guess, for $150 and then, make it appear that it wasn't a suicide, but you're not going to pay it off. And if we aren't careful, then we will see a pattern in European society in terms of debt. Because in traditional European society, they had these things called debtors' prisons. There was a significant number of them. And these prisons weren't for the hardcore felons. They were for people who didn't pay their bills. And I'm looking at our children, they'll go from one phone company to the next phone company without paying this phone company off without paying. Like Europeans don't have paperwork. So orphanages come back. I'm waiting for the debtors' prisons to come back. I'm really waiting for that. They can make you pay for medical insurance. So this debt thing is so far out of hand, it's not funny. So folks need to rethink their wedding. There was we married a couple a number of years ago, and it was one of the most beautiful, the most simple weddings that I had seen or participated in. It was everybody who did something in this wedding was part of the immediate or extended family. So the guy who was doing the pictures, he was uncle or whoever. I think it's like with you all too. Wasn't a photographer? No, photographer was a friend. Yeah. So all of the food was done by the bride's 3 of her best friends. Okay. All of the children that sat, and for some of the petals, cut them out. You know, spent like we cutting them out. So really, the most expensive thing on them were their outfits. And I knew those two, they didn't pay. They didn't pay. And in fact, they were so conscious of what they were doing, they had a wedding here and a wedding in the town where his parents were at. And they were able to do that without incurring any debt. Without incurring any debt. They didn't want any gifts, and they gave everybody one of these. Every person's look different. You might say, okay, that's some cheap wood beads, right? But everybody had different interpretations of it. For me, this symbolized the degree of difficulty on the line in the relationship. And a reminder that it was our responsibility to come in and be there whenever they needed assistance to help out. Yeah, but this is maybe, I don't know, quarter's worth of material. You buy it in bulk. It's like, this is symbolic. This will be with us forever. Every time I see this, I'm going to remember. And it's really, really simple. Simple stuff. Really, really simple stuff. Okay. How do we start to solve this problem? It's not complicated, because we're genius. First and foremost, we can substitute things of meaning here, of lasting meaning, that'll last forever. Things that the person needs. Here go my stories again. Eniya's mom liked me. I was kind of freaked out because, you know, you watch TV and the mother-in-laws will like when you hate your guts. Eniya's mom liked me, and I found out why. When we started dating, we were in Chicago. It's wintertime. I bought her a pair of long johns, long underwear, keep her legs warm. And her mother knew that I was concerned about her health. I didn't click until later, but that was something that she needed. I think that probably would have done her more good than a diamond in Chicago. If anything, that probably would have hurt her because the metal would have got cold and would have stuck to her hand and got frozen. So it's like we need to look and see what it is that the person who are with needs. If they can't read that correct, that's their issue. But what do they need? Not necessarily what they want. That comes secondary. What do they need? What can I supply that they need? To me, that makes sense. That makes sense. How do you know somebody loves you? Because they care for you and they act like they care for you. They want you to remain whole. They want you to remain healthy. They want you to remain sane. They're supposed to be taking care of you, not just with their mouth. They're supposed to be taking care of you.